MMA Now, powered by Film On TV Networks.
I'm David Kano with Film On TV's MMA Now here in Las Vegas, Nevada at the Palazzo. And joining me right now is the one, the only Matt Perrault from Yahoo Sports Radio. Matt, how you doing?
David, good to be with you. How are you?
Pretty good. Earlier you got to talk to my colleague. Now you get the big dog in here. How do you feel?
I feel great. It should be fun. I was asking you questions, and now you get to ask me questions, so it should be fun.
You had a lot of interesting things to say earlier in your broadcast. You felt like Conor McGregor, this was going to hurt Dana White, the whole promotion. Why do you feel that way?
I don't know if it's going to hurt Dana White. I think they're making a mistake. I think in terms of having your number one draw, having your biggest star, and I know that it's part of your responsibilities as a fighter, as Dana said over and over again, but you have your biggest fighter now not being a part of your biggest event, UFC 200. Find him, hit him in the pocketbook, but get him in the octagon against Nate Diaz. The fans want to see it. The fighters want to have it. Let him fight. Promotion, he's already given more promotion than Dana White could pay for UFC 200. It's so big that 197 has been overshadowed.
So what do you see happening July 9th, 2016, T-Mobile Arena, UFC 200 main event? Who is that?
It's not going to be Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor. I think the UFC is going to hold. I think they're going to make a huge mistake, and they're going to cut their nose off to spite their face. And I think that they are going to try to give us a John Jones, Daniel Cormier 2 headliner, and try to keep fans happy with that fight and hope that they don't get really upset about Conor McGregor not being a part of it and not fighting Nate Diaz. So if I'm Nate, I'm really angry because I'm missing out on a payday, and we'll see how much money actually Nate winds up making against whomever he winds up fighting, but it won't be the payday he's expecting against Conor.
Now you live in Vegas, you're around. What's in the air regarding the Conor McGregor news? Has he taken the shine of John Jones and the return of him at 197?
I think it depends on tomorrow night. I think if John Jones goes out there and whips OSP in the first round and looks tremendous doing it, then I think the fans' appetite will remember what John Bones Jones was in the octagon, and they'll really like to see the Cormier fight happen. But Conor McGregor brings non-fans of the UFC and MMA to TVs and to the arena. So this is about the overall health of the MMA world, and Conor not being a part of it. And Dana can say whatever he wants. Conor will fight in the future and whatnot, but 200's their big marquee event. International Fight Week, all from July 5th all the way through UFC 200. Not having Conor here or being a part of it will hurt the UFC.
The one fight that we didn't really touch on at all was the Carla Esparza return of her versus Juliana Lima. Last we saw Carla, she took a beating. Yeah. Joanna Jwick. What's her mindset? What do you think that fight's going to be about? Do you think she gets a win?
Probably. I mean, those are, in terms of where the UFC is, this is one of the big things the UFC has to work on, is the education down the card of the public. And the UFC diehards know about these fighters, but in terms of general public awareness, they just don't know the fighters down the card, and it has to improve, because those are all fights that I think up-and-coming fighters will look at and say, all right, that could be the next superstar. There could be others in the octagon here. But if you're not on the pay-per-view card, it's tough right now for a lot of the UFC. And that's why I think, going back to the Conor thing, when you have your big guys, you got to ride them as far as you can, because there are fighters down the card that are good, that are going to be coming up, and they get exposure when you have the big fighters out there.
Last question before you get back on air. Something we talked about in the past was the fact that MMA has risen drastically in the last 2 years, the last year. It's a big day in sports. Josh Norman signs with the Redskins. You have the NBA playoffs. And I kind of said that MMA is still under basketball, but it's over baseball. Where do you think MMA ranks right now with McGregor and everything else that's going on?
On the superstar level, you can make the case that it's bigger than hockey. I mean, hockey gets beat repeatedly by Sunday Night Baseball right now. If you look at those numbers, the NHL is getting beaten with their playoffs. The NBA curb stomps both baseball and the NHL playoffs. UFC, when they have a big draw like Saturday night, UFC absolutely comes in right behind, you used to say number 3. But that's a pretty precarious position. They can drop pretty fast. If they make these mistakes, if they don't play their hand right, they can get dropped and they can move on. And boxing made mistakes left and right, and then UFC came back and passed them. And I'm not saying boxing is going to revitalize itself to pass the UFC, but these are mistakes that can't be made, and they're making them with Conor McGregor right now that could come back and burn them.
I lied. One more question. Is UFC executive in Matt Perrault's future?
No, not at all. I love it here. This is the fight capital of the world. And to not have the greatest fighter right now, the biggest name involved in the biggest event of this summer, to not have Conor McGregor at UFC 200 is a gigantic disappointment. I'm a huge McGregor guy. I think you make exceptions for your superstars. Find Conor McGregor, move on. Let's get the fight, let's get him on 200, and let's stop playing this game of we're not making a precedent, we're not going to set this up just for Conor McGregor.
That right there is Matt Perrault from Yahoo Sports Radio, and when he comes to LA, he's going to join us in studio. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.